Welcome to the Brand Exchange podcast. My name is Yohji. I would like to introduce our guest this week. It's Mr. AJ Dimarucot, and he's a graphic designer, illustrator, art director, and much, much more. He has done work for brands like Nike, NBA, Jordan Brand, Adobe, and multiple NFT, Web3, cryptoverse projects, to just name a few. He's also the co-founder and director at the Communication Design Association of the Philippines and a co-owner at Dos Hermanos Locos Food Corp. So he's also an entrepreneur and has won multiple awards for such as the Wood Pencil for Nike Hypercord, 50 cover book winners, and more. AJ, thank you so much for making some time today and welcome to the show.
Oh, that's a long intro. Thank you for having me.
I am so impressed. And, this is a podcast more targeted towards entrepreneurs and startup founders. So I'm not talking too much about design. I think there are many people who do that already, but I do have to talk a little bit about it because I'm so impressed. I mean, CR7, Cristiano Ronaldo, what do you call that? Murals or like artworks? What's the right word?
That was the project with AKQA in China for Ronaldo's first time visit there. I did what was supposed to look like a real mural, but it was all digitally made. Okay. And so they created a film, like a teaser film for Ronaldo's visit.
Okay, awesome.
I don't even remember what year that was. So, but that was all done in post and all digitals.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, that's a good thing when you can't remember such achievements anymore. That must say a lot of things are going right for you. I'm really interested because that was never my path. So, AJ, I want to understand for huge brands like Nike, etc., how does that work? Do you have to be one time on their radar and then once you're in their spotlight, like they just reach out to you? Or
when people ask me that question, like young people or basically anybody, like how do you, like some of them even like in a very, very shy way, like how do you work with brands like that? Funny because like I've got to work with Nike, like it wasn't just one way. It was like, maybe I could count it in one hand, like how many different paths that I got to work with Nike. So there really isn't one way. The first way was when I worked in Ogilvy as in an ad agency back in 2008 to 2008. Nike was a regional client of Ogilvy in the region. So naturally we got to work with Nike as an agency. That was the first way. And then the second way was, since we worked with Nike, some of our people in Ogilvy actually, they resigned and then got to work with Nike within Nike Philippines. And then, so I did some, because we worked together in Ogilvy. And then when they were at client side, they asked me personally, as like myself, can you do some stuff for Nike? And I'm like, okay, definitely. And so that was the second way. And then I posted my work on Behance. Back in the day, Behance was probably one of just the few social media sites where you can post work. Some art director found me on Behance, an art director from Portland at that time. So it's pretty like super random. I posted the work. Actually, it's a funny story because it's the same artwork that got me to work with Adidas and then also got me to work with Nike. It was purely a fan art of Kevin Garnett. I'm not sure if you watch basketball or aware.
Yeah, I don't, but that name is famous enough for me to understand.
Yeah, Kevin Garnett was pretty famous at the time. I created an image of him. That's how I got to work with Adidas. I put it on Behance, and then that's how I got to work with Nike. Okay. So I owe him partly for my career with Nike.
Okay, and shout out to Kevin Garnett then.
Yeah, and then I posted some work in there in Behance, and then I posted some work on some streetwear blogs. I think that was freshnessmag.com at that time. You can submit like news. Okay. So the work that I did with Nike here in the Philippines, I posted it there. And then somebody at Nike again saw me in Portland. And so many, many ways. And then And then being in the network in the Philippines, I joined a lot of design contests, like what normally as a judge, since I get to know the local industry, some of them I involved myself in local events. So some of them, some other judges turn out to be like big names in the region. Like they have a Nike account in
Right.
AKQA in China, or somebody, a co-judge was happened to have Nike, was working with the Nike account for BBH in Singapore, another huge global agency.
All right.
And they needed somebody to work on a LeBron James campaign in the Philippines. So
Awesome.
basically
All right. Understood.
everything, whether it's, yeah, I do the work myself or I network with other people, and I get to land some connections with the brand.
Let me just sum that up for the youngsters here. So number one, if you really want to work with a brand, you can try to work with a company that works with the brand. So you start getting tipped into the circle, right? Number two is just present your work online. Don't be shy. Put it out there. Number three was repurposing the work that you've done before with new partners or new medias to maybe tell them in a different light and maybe just therefore reach more people and then therefore get contacted. And of course, building your own community and building your own strong big circle. Was that about right? Did I get that well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. One more experience, past story maybe. Do you have any key moment that you would like to share with the youngsters that really changed your career path or that it's worth telling?
That was one of the major ones.
Okay.
When I shared, like, I just created work that I love to do. One of the ways to get to work with clients is really before they even come to you, create something that you are passionate about around a certain brand, around a certain, if you like movies, create content around the movies that you love. A lot of people say it's like not good, it's bad, it's spec work, but to me, it's okay. It's a peek into what you think and how you create. And sometimes some clients actually look for that. Some of the designers that I come across on Twitter, they're like, "Oh, you shouldn't do like, it's not real work, when you create something out of thin air
Yeah.
for like a brand like Nike, for example." But I don't believe that at all. To me, sometimes you need to have your own way of thinking about a certain brand, and it doesn't have to come. This probably will go against what you're thinking as well. With like design thinking and thinking about the customer and the audience. There's also value in bringing your own ideas without thinking about what the customer
Oh
wants.
yes, no, for sure.
It's a bit arrogant, I think, in a
No,
sense.
I don't think
But
so.
there's like, you need to bring your own vision or your own imagination into a brand, into a concept.
I
And I think that's what the Nikes of this world look for. I guess they don't necessarily, I'm sure they do, but don't necessarily create like a sneaker based on what 100 people think about, like random customers. So what do you think of this?
yeah.
Uh,
I mean,
like an FGD sneaker, they bring their own, like, their own vision.
I think what you just described is very interesting, and I want to clear that out a bit. I think it doesn't have anything to do with me not agreeing with that. I think that us being a little bit more in the strategic or like alignment part of the business is actually brother sister relationship with the creative part of the business. So I think that if Nike shoe itself are completely creative products that I have absolutely no idea about of how they being developed at itself, but there is a team in Nike that gets paid millions to make sure that everything fits under the Nike brand umbrella, right? So I think that necessarily in this team, a super creative person that keeps pushing their own idea might not fit as well, but in that campaign, in that really creative department of content and product creation, where you absolute like rule a certain standard of design and creativity, right? I think those are things that are completely different but need to match together within a certain brand or company.
It's all about like shooting your shot, right?
Oh
It's all
yes,
about taking
definitely.
risks and gambles.
Yes.
And that's how my career has paid off, by making calculated risks, basically shooting for the
Very
stars.
good. Very good. I love that. Can I ask, do you like, I know we just discussed it, like you're more in the creative, maybe let's call it even artistic kind of side of the branded businesses, but do you get a strategic document from the brand, any like guidelines in terms of like what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do? Not necessarily just visual guidelines, but like strategically, where are the boundaries of what this brand can represent?
There's some that are quite specific, like they'll give you some briefs where they'll give you a little bit of background research and the things that they would like to see, explorations that they've already started, whether it's visual explorations, stylescapes, mood boards.
Okay.
But there are brands like, say, brands like Nike, they have specific briefs as well, but it's like a very open brief on, say, let's talk about the last 50 years of Nike and the next 50 years of Nike. And it would be stylistically, they expect you to bring your own work into the equation.
Okay.
But the concept and strategy is, while it's specific, it's also very open. And that's what I like about when they send briefs. Sometimes it's very loose.
Okay. Good.
To the point that they even sort of ask you to bring more of what you think it should be. At least in my experience with working on t-shirts with the brand, because they use the t-shirt as more like the canvas for the designer and the artist to bring their own voice into, which is and co-signed by Nike. And I think that's the most amazing thing about working with a brand like Nike or Jordan Brand, is you bring your voice into it, and they like it enough. They put it on the products,
Some authenticity.
which is like but it's also different with like working with a specific project where it's like a specific output, like a portrait of Ronaldo, or how do we create a like a thing, a set of illustrations for LeBron James app, the app that they use there in the Philippines. So those are more like specific creative directed projects.
Okay.
But the projects that I also really love are, they allow you to
Go.
roam free
Go do it.
within a bigger,
Yeah.
not even a boundary. It's like,
Just literally
it's
taking
like
their slogan and
it's
putting
expansive.
it on top of the brief. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's pretty much, do your thing, and if you like it enough, we'll use them.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big Nike wearer, but I am a big Nike admirer in terms of how much money, how much time, how much thought and just heart and soul they put into the brand. I mean, you just described we are in the briefing process, and you literally could just take the tagline and just use that in terms of the things that you told us. I just absolutely love when things are this thought through and things just work. You are now very experienced creator, designer. It takes a little bit more to be successful than just having strong Photoshop and drawing skills, right? What is that's missing for maybe, I don't know, youngsters, beginners, that needs to be added to that? It's a certain way of your own strategy or some process, or like, what is it for you?
Yeah, I can't really say it for a lot of other people, but for myself, it would be, at least in my own experience or in my own like practice, I suppose it was something that I developed within the agency world, was to really put things together that are not normally
It's
something
good.
that come
Yeah,
together.
I like that.
So like even my old former ECD would say that an idea is something where you take one concept and put it together with another concept. that are that normally don't
Yeah.
mesh or that are unexpected. And that's sort of kind of like almost like a formula for advertising. You think about like putting things that are different. Even on social media, there was a person where you just bring something really weird into one thing and then mash it with something that's really weird into another thing. So he was talking about a guy who went viral because he was like doing like very classical like violin stuff and then with scantily clad women around him. So such a random account. and
Good
then
example. All right.
and then he blew up because that was the account he was creating. I don't know if it was TikTok or IG or something.
Okay.
And so I think it works with a lot of things. I guess that's what I try to do with my kind of work. Just there's this concept called. Actually, I created the group before with a friend of mine called collision theory.
Oh, nice.
And the collision theory it's a chemistry concept where like two gases would, if they bump into each other, they can create something new or they can not work. So they need enough energy to come together, and if that energy is successful, they form another molecule or another, in my case, another
Yeah.
idea. So you bring together two ideas. They might not work, or it could come up. You can come up with something totally fresh, totally
Yeah, I mean,
new.
you guys put an amazing name on that. When you said the name, I already exactly knew what you're going to tell me in the next few seconds. So
Mhm.
that's awesome naming.
Yeah,
Please continue. I love it.
yeah. So I guess my work is really based on the idea of collision theory. Even now, when I work with AI and some experimentations with, I think you've seen some of them on LinkedIn, like we experiment on, Nike
Yeah.
sneakers with, like, how would it look like in a vintage 1950s
Or the
poster? Or
Japanese
I
seasonal.
had some
Yeah.
where I put, yeah, or Nike sneakers in ancient ukiyo-e,
Yeah.
Japanese posters and paintings. Or I was doing some ideas around Captain America, but it's a Russian propaganda posters. So things like that
Very
are
nice. Very nice.
quite surprising and quite, it's basically the idea of collision
All right.
theory, and that's in my work. So I guess there's like an underlying concept in most of my work. I guess now at this point it's much needed by brands to try to be different, right? But if we go back to actually design and brand identity, now it's also going into a very sameness. Everybody's like looking the same. They even had the term like the millennial style brand identity. I'm more like I want to bring it back to the 90s where it's a bit it's crazier and organic.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole different discussion, right? That very balance over the
Yeah.
volcano between what is simpler or what is easier to consume, a complex brand or a simpler brand. What most people don't understand is that making a simple, minimalistic brand like Apple is a trillion times harder to create than something very, very creative, because you have to put so much more thinking process into it and like understand what does think different mean, like you keep trying to put every single product, service, company, culture, values, mission, vision into one tagline or one statement is one of the hardest things that I've ever encountered in my life. So I think the most of the brands that are coming out these days are then therefore kind of like the fake simplified versions of what everyone is trying to be, or like that Apple fake coolness that is going around. And I think that's what you were describing, right? That like everything starts to becoming linear because everyone has a white background and a Helvetica font in their logo, of just like being modernly simple. But like you have to give that collision theory. You have to give your X factor. You have to have your secret sauce to mix in, because you need to mesh and fuse with the others, but then have that thing that stands out once you land on the page, right? I think I love 80s, 90s style. I don't think 80s, 90s logo design series in terms of like legibility work anymore, because they did not have Apple Watches that time. We do have them. So you have to have a certain font that is readable, right? Otherwise things change, technology changes. But creativity and just like distinctiveness. I don't like the trend that everyone's starting not completely thought through process of building simplistic brand or identities. Yeah. So you mentioned your clothing brand and your restaurant. So obviously you are a very successful entrepreneur, and you have also then experienced what it means to be on the business side, where you cannot sadly spend your whole day worrying about the colors and the identity and all the design parts of it. So what's your message to founders? Like what role should design play when actually creating a business that makes money and can survive?
Yeah, you tell me.
It's hard.
It's hard. It's hard to be a designer and have business, because sometimes you just want to be working on visual work, and then when you create a business, there are so many factors. Like, for example, it's a business for the clothing brand. It's a business my wife and I started. So how do you do that? Like, eventually it will cause some strains in your relationship, because you're working with your wife, and then you have your own ways of working, and then all of a sudden your wife becomes a client of yours in a sense, right? So that's tough. That's tough. Or in the restaurant business, you're working with people who, since it's such a huge, it needs a lot of capital. You take on certain partners, and then working with partners, you realize that you can't just tell people what to do, right? Because you all equally come together. And to me, I've always been a designer. My own concepts about what the concept of the restaurant was and how it should move forward. And then you need to consider now 7 other people. So it's not easy. So to me, like, if you're a designer or a creative starting a business and you want control, then you have to be a dictator of sorts. At least in my kind of style. You need to bring your vision into almost, I don't want to be like sounding like almost kind of like a Steve Jobs tyrannical.
Yeah, it's probably.
I think I think kind of works like in some businesses. It's actually quite opposite to now how people should be doing, like leading from the front, like being a servant leader kind of thing, hearing those things. But I'm also seeing like these big companies, they were also in a way quite, I guess the way Elon Musk is, quite tyrannical in a sense. I'm not encouraging that to be like how people should, create, their businesses in that style. But personally, I think that's where I'm more like at in a sense, because I need to bring people to follow that lead and follow that vision. And that might come out as, if it's your business, right? Then, but sometimes people might think that's a bit too harsh.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, I'm not a big business person. It's just like my own little experiences. If I would do something else, something new, then I might not even try to like get some funding, because then I would have some bosses. So I guess it's an issue with like authority in a sense. Like, but if I might have to be like 10 years, eating, like Krista would say, or even was it Caribbean,
Yeah.
eating shit, eating for like while your friends are partying, you're there in the house eating like cheap ramen. It might
Yeah.
have to be something like that, and you have to bootstrap your way into
I mean,
success. That's probably more of my
that's good. Yeah,
my
I'm
path
sure there are a
these
million
days.
people out there who will take similar paths. I mean, you described in the beginning 5 ways of like making it right with just one client like Nike, Adidas, or whatever. So even for this part of the journey, like starting off entrepreneurship, startup life, there are again not just five, but probably 5 million ways of achieving the same thing. And yeah, we struggled the same way. I mean, I was as creative as you maybe 7 years ago, and then started the more strategic path. But yeah, we also had such a hard time. Just don't know what we were doing. But you don't know if it's a bad idea until you tried it and failed. So I'm all for that. Love Gary as well, big fan, and hope that I get the chance to try many more things in the future.
I love that. I think it's all about uh, being willing
Yeah.
to fail.
Um, I want to wrap it up with one question that is asked from startup founders and entrepreneurs the most in the past few months when I attended a few, community events in the Manila area. And it's always like, hey, I have a product, I have a service. What is like the most important thing on the visual side that like I should keep in mind? And I will answer my own question first, and then hopefully you have something else that I could add on in the future from some even more creative person than I am. Is that to just keep it simple, right? And I know it sounds a little bit cheesy, but like people, especially in the metaverse, NFT, crypto area, they're always trying to make their product look like something straight out of the matrix, right? And I always tell them is like, yes, it's a very futuristic technology. It's probably the technology of tomorrow, and many things will stay, but it doesn't mean that everything needs to react and look like it, right? Like it's money. Like you have to trust it. Like you can't make look something like a future alien war asset and then expect me to trust it with my money, right? You have to find the right balance between what that thing is that makes you special, which is probably something about technology and blockchain and DAOs and whatnot, but like fuse it with something that your customers are familiar with. And like me, for example, I do trade a few things. I'm not a complete nuthead about it right now, but like what is it that you believe would be a good answer? Like I'm still figuring it out. Like what should people do? You can name an example or just do it in general, but in the starting phase, what's the most important thing to keep in mind?
I guess a lot of the projects that are coming out in the NFT and Web3 space are trying to capture a vision of the future, right? So, and then when everybody tends to do that, it becomes sort of like cliche-ish in that sense, like a cyberpunk view of what the future is. And they try to, and they only know the way to do that is to show like a universe that seems
Mm-hmm.
far away. I guess it also is highly inspired by Ready Player One and that
Being
vision
in it.
of
Yeah.
with that book, right? The metaverse. Like to me, it that whole world of the concept of the metaverse and Web3, it doesn't necessarily even have to be. It doesn't even have to involve like AR and VR and headsets and all those things because it can already be done here. Or the worlds are already out there and communities who are playing games, and all you need is to add a layer of to me to add a layer of decentralization and true digital ownership. If you have that, then you already
Mm.
have the metaverse, I think. because the games have already been there for the longest time. And if they add that component of
Yeah.
true digital ownership, then I think that's already what the future is. And it doesn't have to involve even, high tech things beyond what your cell phone is. And it's already been shown here in the Philippines with the success of
Yeah.
Axie, although now it's in a terrible spot. That to me was already the metaverse where people were, playing and owning
Correct.
digital assets
Yeah. The
system.
first steps are out there.
Like the big companies that try to do the future, this is how we do it in the future. I think they can't really say crypto outright or decentralization outright, but they use other things. They try to resell the idea of the
Correct.
future within the
Yeah.
goggles, which I feel isn't really where it's going to be. I think it's going to be much
I,
simpler than that.
you gave us so much time and shared your experience. I really appreciate it. I want to wrap it up, maybe to give you a chance. Is there anything that you're working on? Is there anything that one of your startups, companies, restaurants, brands is launching that you would like to get people excited about? Anything to announce?
Yeah, well, yeah, if there are companies out there who want to work with maybe young startup companies within the Web3 space, who need, I guess, over the years, a identity person or building out teams,
All right, we put the
just
link in the
reach out to
description,
me.
guys. One more time, AJ, thank you so much. That was an absolute great conversation. Thanks for being on the show, and I hope I'll be able to invite you again maybe next year to get a next update.
Yeah, anytime, man.